Week 15 of the NFL season has arrived. Just 4 weeks left of the NFL regular season. Johnny Sports Network here to provide you with my Week 15 NFL predictions. Last week, I went 9-4. You have to admire how close these games were this past week. And all four of the games I was incorrect on, they were just close games that just didn't go the way I was predicting them to go, and that just happens sometimes. But the majority of the games being close this week, that is what you want to see in the NFL each and every single week. And I really regret not calling for the Rams upset. I did talk about how that game was a trap game for the Bills, but I did think they would overcome that. But it just didn't happen. What does Week 15 have in store for us as we are getting closer and closer to the end of the regular season? I am 139-69 on the season so far. Without further ado, let's get to the Week 15 NFL predictions right here on the Johnny Sports Network. As always, we begin with Thursday Night Football, and this week we have an NFC West matchup, the Rams and 49ers. And both teams, they not only got a much-needed victory, but a season-saving victory last week. The Rams in an upset win over the Bills, and the 49ers a dominant win over the Bears. I did say in my Week 13 NFL takeaways last week, which, by the way, it is on YouTube Shorts, that the next two games against the Bears and the Rams are must wins for the 49ers, as their season going into last week was on the line, and it's on the line again this week. In fact, you can really make the statement that the season could be on the line for both teams. The Rams maybe not as much, as they are currently sitting in 8th, just outside the NFC playoff picture. When we saw this match in Week 3, the Rams pulled off the upset, and it was a game where it looked like the 49ers were going to win, but Jake Moody missed a 55-yard field goal, and the Rams in 3 plays, they went on to tie the game. The 49ers, they had to punt the ball back to the Rams, and the Rams, they got into field goal range to win the game. The big question for the 49ers, will Nick Bosa return this week? As Nick Bosa, he has missed the last few games due to an oblique injury. And there was reports that things were in line for him to play last week, but he ultimately did not play in the game last week against the Bears. Also, running back Isaac Guerendo is questionable with a foot injury. And with Chris McCaffrey and Jordan Mason already on the IR, the 49ers, they could be down to 4th-string running back Patrick Taylor Jr. I expect the running games to have a huge impact in the game, as in the last 3 games, both teams are 30th and 31st in run defense. But I'm going to go with the 49ers on this one in a game that I feel like is season-saving for both teams. It's more of a season-saving game for the 49ers. I think they prevail in this one, a very close game. Cowboys and Panthers. The Cowboys with a heartbreaking defeat on Monday Night Football against the Bengals last week, where it looked like the Cowboys were going to have a chance to win the game at the end of regulation, but then a miscue on special teams is what set up the Bengals game-winning touchdown. And now the Cowboys go on the road to take on a Panthers team that, despite their 3-10 record, they have shown a lot of grit in recent weeks, as they have played serious contenders very close. They played the Chiefs close a couple of weeks ago. They played an underrated Buccaneers team really close 2 weeks ago. And last week they played the Eagles really close. And the Panthers, they have narrowly pulled off an upset each of the last 3 weeks. But ultimately they just haven't done enough to get the job done in each of those games. And I honestly would not be surprised if this was the highest scoring game of the week, as these are the two worst scoring defenses in the entire league. The Cowboys are 30th in run defense, while the Panthers, they're 32nd in run defense. This is a game where it feels like I have to pick someone to win this game because somebody has to win. And as much as I have liked seeing the Panthers' effort in their last 5 games, they've been playing with a lot of grit. I just feel like the Cowboys, they are a slightly better defense, and they surprisingly play a lot better on the road this season than they do at home. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys to win a game that is pretty much a coin flip where I just had to pick somebody to win. Chiefs and Browns. The Chiefs once again finding a way to win. This time it looked like the game-winning field goal attempt was going to go off the upright, but it went through the other side of the goalpost to give the Chiefs the AFC West division. And now they go on the road to take on a Browns team that has been notorious for pulling off upsets in the dog pound. We've seen it season after season. And I am going to say this is a trap game for the Chiefs. I would not be surprised if the Browns ended up winning this game. This automatically, we're either going to see the Chiefs finally lose a one-possession game, or once again, they will find a way to win, as they have now won, I think it's 15 consecutive one-possession games. The last time a one-possession game did not go their way, it was against the Raiders on Christmas Day. And I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I think they just find another way to win, but I would not be surprised if the Browns did win this game, because we have seen in the past the Browns pull off unexpected upsets, and I do think there is some value to taking the points with the Browns this week, because even if the Browns, they don't pull off the upset outright, I think they at least cover, because we have seen how the Chiefs have struggled to cover this entire season. Dolphins and Texans. The Dolphins were able to stay in the playoff race with a much-needed win over the Jets in overtime, while the Texans, they were one of the many teams who had their bye week last week. And CJ Stroud, he has been underperforming quite a bit this season, as he has not thrown for more than 300 yards in over 2 months. I mean, he still has a lot of passing yards this season, though. He has 3,117 on the season, and he is on a phenomenal pace to top his season stats from last season. But he has 9 interceptions on the season compared to 5 in his rookie year. And the Dolphins defense, I have found the Dolphins defense as a very underrated defense in the last couple of seasons. But the current narrative about the Dolphins is they can't win against the good teams in the league. I think they've only won one game against a team above 500 in the last 2 seasons, I think, is what it is. And with the Texans being off their bye week, I do think it was very beneficial for CJ Stroud, as he has been struggling as of late. I'm going to go with the Texans to win this one. I think the Dolphins narrative continues about how they can't win against the good teams in the league. And I do think that will essentially end the Dolphins' playoff hopes with the way the NFL is being paced right now. Jets and Jaguars, and I'm not going to talk too much about this game as both teams, they are eliminated from playoff contention. They're both 3-10. This is another game where I feel like I just had to pick somebody to win. And I am ultimately going to pick the Jaguars in this game because I am not 100% certain what Aaron Rodgers' track record is in games in the state of Florida, but I know that it is not good history. It's not a good track record. And the Jaguars, they did get an upset victory on the road against the Titans last week in what was another game where I just had to pick somebody to win. And the Jets, being close to pulling off an upset last week and losing in overtime, I do think that is still on their minds going on the road in this game. And I'm going to pick the Jaguars due to Aaron Rodgers' horrendous history in the state of Florida. Commanders and Saints. The Commanders, they had their bye week last week, and they go on the road to take on a Saints team that has had an up and down season. Started off the season 2-0, then they went on a 7-game losing streak, and they have won 3 out of their last 4 games. And something about this just feels too good to be true, in my opinion. The Commanders are favored by 7 points right now, which I guess it does make some sense as the Commanders. They have done pretty well so far this season. They are 8-5. They are right in the playoff mix, while the Saints, they've had an up and down kind of season. But this feels like a game where the Commanders, they just have to find a way to win. I can't see the Commanders dominating in this game. I think it's one of those games where the Saints, they may have the lead late, and the Commanders, they just simply find a way. Something about this just feels too good to be true. I am considering labeling it a trap game, but I do think the Commanders, they do find a way to win this game. The question is the 7 points, is that a margin that is too good to be true or not? But I will go with the Commanders to win outright. Ravens and Giants. They say any given Sunday. The Ravens, they are favored by more than 2 touchdowns in this game. In a road game, very late into the season. And there is a couple of games a season where John Harbaugh, he makes pretty questionable coaching decisions, and it ends up not in the Ravens' favor, and they will lose games where they should win. But do I think something like that happens here? No, I do not. Even though they do say any given Sunday. The Giants, a 2-11 season, they have given some valiant efforts this season and made some games close. But I feel like this game is going to be fairly close to the equivalence of the Eagles and Giants earlier in the season, where at that moment it was the Giants' worst game of the season. Derrick Henry, second in the NFL in rushing yards, only behind Saquon Barkley. The Giants, they can't stop the run well at all. This feels pretty self-explanatory. I am going to pick the Ravens to win this game, I'd say fairly convincingly. I'll be surprised if the Giants even keep this game close. Bengals and Titans. The Bengals, they picked up a season-saving victory over the Cowboys last week on Monday Night Football. And now off the short week, they go on the road to take on the Titans. a Titans team that has done well defensively this season. They are towards the top of the league in total defense, but their offense, more often than not this season, has not been able to produce enough points to win games. And that was the case last week as well against the Jaguars. The defense held them to 10 points, but the offense could only score 6 points. And with the Bengals season-saving victory against the Cowboys last week, there is momentum from that because the Bengals, they know that their backs are further against the wall than it has been throughout the season. People do talk about how the Chargers game a couple weeks ago was the Bengals season where their backs were against the wall, but they are theoretically still in the playoff race. They just need a lot of help in these final 4 weeks. But I do think they do get the win over a Titans team that more often than not this season have not been able to do enough offensively. Patriots and Cardinals. The Patriots, they had their bye week last week, while the Cardinals, they had a second loss to the Seahawks within a couple of weeks. And the Cardinals, they continue to be really unpredictable for me. As I have mentioned this for the last couple of weeks, but more often than not, when I pick the Cardinals to win, they lose. And when I pick the Cardinals to not win, they win. The Patriots this season, we have seen on occasion their ability to keep games close, as their defense has been able to keep them in some games this season. For this game, however, either way, what I feel like happens in this game is going to be the opposite of what I predict, because that is what happens more often than not when predicting a Cardinals game. I feel like the Cardinals, they do get the win in this one. The Patriots, I don't know if they can do enough offensively to win this game. As the Patriots, I still think that they need to make a lot of improvements to become a playoff contender within the next few years. I think it's going to take them some time. But I do think Drake May, at this point, he is having some potential in this league. He's had some good games. He's had some good moments. But this just isn't the time for him. I'm going to go with the Cardinals. And we will see how this game plays out. As the Cardinals, they continue to be unpredictable. Colts and Broncos, both teams, they had their bye week last week. And I really do like the quarterback matchup in this game. Anthony Richardson for the Colts, Bo Nix for the Broncos. Two quarterbacks that I do think have a very bright future in the league. Anthony Richardson, he has been dealing with injuries throughout his short NFL career so far. And throughout the season, he has turned the ball over a lot. Bo Nix, he had to deal with his turnover issues early on in the season. But he has overcome that. He has been smarter with the football. He has shown lots of improvement from now compared to the beginning of the season. And it looked like Jaden Daniels was running away with the Rookie of the Year, but Bo Nix, he has been inching closer and closer to taking Rookie of the Year away from Jaden Daniels. And I think if the Broncos make the playoffs this season, I do think that Bo Nix, he should get Rookie of the Year. But I ultimately think that if both the Commanders and Broncos made the playoffs, I think it would go to Daniels. But the Broncos, in my opinion, I know the Commanders, they've done well this season, but I think the Broncos are the most improved team in the league, in my opinion. As the Broncos, they just needed good and smart quarterback play to be successful, and that is what Bo Nix has been doing ever since he struggled earlier in the season. And I'm going to pick the Broncos because I like their defense better than the Colts, and I think this comes down to which quarterback plays smarter football, and I think that is going to be Bo Nix. I'm going to go with the Broncos. Bills and Lions, without a doubt, the game of the week, and perhaps the game of the season. And this could potentially be a preview for the Super Bowl in New Orleans in February. I am confident that this game is going to live up to the hype. Josh Allen had a historic day last week against the Rams. Despite the defeat, he had 3 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns. The first quarterback in NFL history to do so. And the Bills go on the road to take on a Lions team that is 12-1, their best start in franchise history. Their only loss this season was to the Buccaneers in week 2, where Dan Campbell, he made himself accountable for the loss, admitting that it was his coaching that cost the Lions that game. And the Lions, they have done nothing but win after that, as they are on an 11-game winning streak. And this game, I do feel like it should be a pick'em, but the Lions, they are a slight favorite in this game, favored by 1.5. And I really do think that this could be the highest scoring game of the week with the way both offenses, they play the game. But the Lions defense has shown a lot of improvement from last season. And in a game that I am going to predict goes back and forth, the big question is, will this game be the highest scoring game of the week? I'm going to go with the Lions to win this one, as I felt the Lions, they were due for a loss last week against the Packers, and that almost happened. But the Lions, they do have that extra rest factor to them, given that they played on Thursday night, while the Bills, they were in an offensive showdown against the Rams last week on the road. Now they're on the road again this week. I am going to take the Lions to continue their winning streak. But this is a game that will, without a doubt, go either way. Buccaneers and Chargers. The Buccaneers, they have taken full advantage of the Falcons' downfall. The Buccaneers were once trailing the NFC South by 3 games, and now with the Falcons' downfall, the Buccaneers now lead the NFC South going into Week 15. And I find this Buccaneers team really underrated. Despite recent injuries to Chris Godwin, who was out for the season, Mike Evans, he missed some time due to an injury. The Buccaneers, they are taking advantage of what's been happening around them. And even though some people may not think so, because the NFC South at this point is the weakest division in the NFL besides the AFC South, I find this Buccaneers team really underrated. And I would not be surprised if the Buccaneers once again won a playoff game once again this year, as Baker Mayfield, he's done well once again this year. And a big question mark for the Buccaneers was, could Baker Mayfield continue to have success without Dave Canales, who left for the Panthers? And I think the Buccaneers, they take advantage of some bitterness the Chargers may have from last week's defeat against the Chiefs, where it looked like they were going to win, but the Chiefs, they're able to march down the field and make a game-winning field goal. I think the Buccaneers pull off the upset, And Baker Mayfield continues to show why he is the most underrated quarterback in the NFL. Up next, we have the Pennsylvania matchup, Steelers and Eagles. Without a doubt, this is the second best game of the week, only behind the Bills and Lions. And I don't know why the two best games of the week are being played at the exact same time. The NFL, they could have flexed this game to Monday night and take out one of the Monday Night Football games this week. I'd say a complete missed opportunity by the NFL. But the Steelers, they have flown under the radar this season, 10-3 on the year. We have gotten used to seeing over the years the Steelers finishing the season just above 500, somehow finding their way into the playoffs and losing the wild card round. But the Steelers, they have looked like they can be serious contenders. But the reason why I am holding back on making the Steelers serious contenders is because I feel like we have seen this movie so many times. I think it's just the Steelers are more improved than what we're used to seeing, but I think the same results may end up taking place. But the Steelers pull out the upset and win this game, then I am open to making the Steelers a serious contender. And Russell Wilson being the star for the Steelers, I was skeptical about it at first because Justin Fields, I thought he did pretty well. I thought Justin Fields would have to lose his starting job to have Russell Wilson start, but ever since Russell Wilson started, it has been nothing but winning except for one game against the Browns, which was a trap game to begin with. For the Steelers to win this game, they have to contain Saquon Barkley. I think if they can hold him to less than 80 rushing yards, I think the Steelers can win. The Steelers, they are fourth in the NFL in run defense, while Saquon Barkley, he's leading the NFL in rushing yards with 1,623 on the year. And the Eagles, during the 9-game winning streak they're on right now, they have been dealing with injuries, but they have still kept winning. George Pickens is expected to be out for the Steelers, and I think that is a huge difference maker in this game, as a top target for Russell Wilson will be out against an Eagles defense that is first in the NFL in total defense. I think the Eagles, they make it 10 in a row. Sunday Night Football, Packers and Seahawks. The Packers, a heartbreaking loss to the Lions on Thursday Night Football last week, while the Seahawks, their up and down kind of season continues. They got a win over the Cardinals last week. The Seahawks, they retain the lead in the NFC West. The status for Seahawks running back Kenneth Walker is in question right now, as it is a calf injury he is dealing with. The Packers, given that they did play on Thursday night last week, I do tend to favor the teams who played on Thursday night the previous week because of the extra days of rest compared to the opponent. But for this game, it's going to be like a lot of other Seahawks games. Which Seahawks defense shows up in this game? As the Seahawks, another unpredictable team like the Cardinals, but for the Seahawks, for them winning this game, it's how will their defense do? Because if it goes into a high-scoring game, that's where the Seahawks, they tend to lose their favor in that matchup. And a Packers team that had some time to reevaluate after losing on Thursday night in heartbreaking fashion, I'm going to go with the Packers to get the win on the road against a Seahawks team that is having an up and down kind of season. The first of two Monday Night Football games this week Bears and Vikings. The Vikings won the first matchup 30-27 in overtime, in a game that should not have gone into overtime to begin with, but somehow it did. And that game was Caleb Williams' best game as an NFL quarterback. 340 passing yards and 2 touchdown passes. Sam Darnold also played really well. 330 passing yards and 2 touchdown passes. Among all the NFL teams in their last 3 games, both of these teams, they rank 31st and 32nd in total defense. The Bears, they have a ton of issues, as they have had for a long time now. And part of their issues is a lack of offensive line, as Caleb Williams is the most sacked quarterback in the NFL this season. And credit to Caleb Williams in the first game, as I did not think he would have much success against a Brian Flores defense, but that was, at least in my opinion, his best game as a pro quarterback. And the Bears, they are 0-6 on the road this season. And with that in mind, also with the Bears, in their first game without Matt Eberflus, the Bears, they were really embarrassed against the 49ers last week. The 49ers dominating from start to finish, while the Vikings, they had a dominant win over the Falcons last week, a Falcons team that has really been going downhill in the last month. I'm going to go with the more confident team this matchup, and that is the Vikings. I think the Vikings, they win this game by a lot more than what they did in the first matchup. Is the Bears' season just could not get over any faster for their fan base. I'm going with the Vikings. The second of 2 Monday Night Football games this week, Falcons and Raiders. A month ago, it looked like the Falcons were going to run away with the NFC South. They had a 3-game lead, but the Falcons are on a 4-game losing streak right now, and they're looking to get back in the win column against a 2-11 Raiders team. Kirk Cousins, despite being 3rd in the NFL in passing yards, 0 touchdown passes and 8 interceptions in the 4-game losing streak. Kirk Cousins also leads the NFL in interceptions thrown. The Falcons, they may be 8th in total offense, but total defense, they are 23rd in the NFL. For the Raiders, rookie tight end Brock Bowers, he is 5th in the NFL in receiving yards. And defensively, the Raiders, they are in the middle of the pack, 15th in total defense. And I also want to add, this is a Desmond Ridder revenge game, as Desmond Ridder, drafted by the Falcons, was the starting quarterback for the Falcons at one point. But then the Falcons, they traded him away. And now they have Kirk Cousins, who has been struggling in the last month. No touchdown passes in the last 4 games. And I am someone who likes to look for trends. And the last 2 times, well, the 2 times we had 2 Monday Night Football games this season, we had a favorite win and we had an underdog win. The last time there was 2 Monday night games this late in the season, a favorite won and an underdog won. I'm going to go with the underdog Raiders here in this game, as I think this is an opportunity for you-know-who to really pull off a massive blindside, because people are looking at the Raiders and like, oh, they're 2-11, oh, they're not that good, they're not that good. The Falcons, they're favored by 4.5. They look like the better team on paper because their offense has Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Kirk Cousins. And I think you know who is going to take really good advantage of that. And they're not going to see it coming, but I am. I am picking the Raiders to pull off this upset on Monday night and ultimately, at least in theory, pretty much ending the Falcons season, especially the Buccaneers upset the Chargers this week. And that will do it for my Week 15 NFL predictions. Comment your picks down below. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. My Week 14 NFL takeaways will be on YouTube Shorts later this week. Also, be on the lookout for my first round predictions for the college football playoff. I'm also doing a Bowl Mania group for the bowl games this season, so if you'd like to join the group, I will put the link to the group in the description box down below. Enjoy the games this week. Until next time, Vegas is always watching.